Welcome to the Voices of Otolaryngology podcast series, where we spotlight diverse perspectives and insights within the field of otolaryngology. I'm your host, Rahul Shah. Let's jump into it. Welcome to the Voices of Otolaryngology. I'm over the moon today. It is always a treat to speak with friends, make new friends, but today I have a special guest, Dr. Soham Roy. We've known each other since med school residency. And for all of you young physicians, section for residents and fellows, these relationships you make interviewing at the fellowship level, they stay with you for life. Dr. Roy, welcome.
Thank you so much, Rahul. It's such a privilege to be here. I'm really honored. Thank you.
Yeah, I think of many of the meetings we've sat together, even some of those that are off the beaten path. American College of Surgeons having coffee with you in the exhibit hall when you were doing fire safety research. So tell us a little bit about your career trajectory. Do you mind, so people can get to know you a little bit?
No, absolutely. For those folks who don't know me, my name's Soham, and I'm currently the chair of pediatric otolaryngology at Children's Hospital of Colorado. Very happy to tell you that we currently have the, I believe, second largest pediatric otolaryngology program in the country by faculty. We're a really big program. My career started at really, I would say it started at WashU in St. Louis, where I went to medical school. And that's what really first introduced me to otolaryngology. Many folks in the otolaryngology community have a WashU connection. I was fortunate enough to do my residency at the University of Miami, and then did my fellowship in pediatric otolaryngology under Charlie Bluestone at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. And then I was taken back to the University of Miami as junior faculty, worked there for a handful of years before I was recruited to the University of Texas at Houston, where I was the division chief for pediatric otolaryngology at UT Houston for about 12 years. And then I was recruited to be the chair here at Children's Colorado. And I've been here for 3 years now.
Can you remind me, if you listen to these, I think I'm a funny guy. A lot of people don't, so you don't have to laugh at my jokes. When did you finish your residency, or when did you start residency? Give me one of those years.
So I started residency in 1995, finished in 2000. Back then, pediatric otolaryngology fellowships was generally a 2-year program. So I finished my training in 2002, all in all. And that's when I started working as faculty.
Great. So let's just be fully transparent. I'm 5 years behind you. I finished at 2005, fellowship 2006, I think. So I cannot believe how much you've accomplished in your career. It's pretty cool. It is really cool. And you've trained at wonderful places across the country. WashU, Pittsburgh with Dr. Bluestone. That's probably such a cool thing. Miami, then Houston, where you were part of the largest program of Peds Oto. And I visited Colorado with yourself, Dr. Agarwal, and I was blown away, Dr. Roy, by what you built there. The residents and fellows and young physicians asked for you, believe it or not. They said, we want to hear from Dr. Roy. He mentors us, he guides us, and they say you have a lot of great information to share with the masses. Platform yours, sir. Why are you so passionate about mentoring the residents and fellows? And then we're going to get into some of the advice you give them along various steps. Why? Why do you spend your time with them? I think there's a lot of things you can be spending your time on.
First of all, I just have to say how touched and how humbled I am to hear this. I mean, I think there's no greater honor that I've received than maybe what you just said, that somebody actually wanted to hear from me about this. And I have goosebumps right now. So I'm just so.
It doesn't happen at home, Dr. Roy. Let your daughter know that somebody actually cares what the father says.
Yeah, believe me, she hasn't figured that part out yet. But it is incredibly humbling to think that somebody would feel that way about me. It's interesting. I had a conversation not too long ago with Troy Woodard, our Academy president, and when Troy called me and we were talking, I said, Troy, I'm a nobody. Why are you calling me? I'm a nobody. Like, it's so humbling and awe-inspiring every time. And it's one of the things that I think I am just so incredibly humbled by is the Academy and what it's meant to all of us over the years and the home that it's provided for us professionally. So to get to your question, why am I so passionate about mentorship? It really stems from my own experience. I would not be where I am today if it weren't for the mentors who invested in me. And I know that this isn't something we normally do, but I'm going to name check a few folks, starting back at WashU with my former chief resident, Dr. John. Bob Jung, who's now an otologist in the Northeast. And Dr. Jung was a chief resident. I was a junior med student, or perhaps I was a fourth year med student. And I didn't know what I was doing. And Dr. Jung really took me in and mentored me through the match process and mentored all of us in my class. We had a big group that went into otolaryngology. I think it was like 9 of us from WashU. I also encountered Ellis Arjmand, who's been a mentor of mine since that day when I was a junior med student. Audie Woolley. I was inspired by some of these folks and then built these relationships with folks like Dr. Lusk, who was my faculty mentor when I was in med school. They are the reason I'm here today. And then that extended well into my time as a resident, certainly well into my time as a fellow, and then even into my faculty career. The only reason that I get to enjoy the career that I have now is because people have invested their time in me. And you can say thank you a million times, but I don't think that's as impactful as doing it for somebody else in their name. Like when I talk to my med students and they say, why do you spend all this time with us in the evenings and on the weekends? I tell them because Dr. Jung, Dr. Arjman, they did this for me. And I want you to know their names. And one day I hope you'll tell your trainees and your mentees about my name because it is the legacy that I will leave behind. I hate to say it, but a lot of patients, especially in the pediatric otolaryngology field, they don't remember who took their kids' tonsils out because a lot of times it's not a real long-term relationship that you develop. Some of them are, but my legacy will remain with the folks that I had an opportunity to engage with in our field.
So I'm going to tell a story, but I want you to start thinking, because as everybody knows, I never prep for these. I didn't prep Dr. Roy. I just said, come join me. And he looked dapper. And I have a fleece because it's freezing in Washington, D.C. It's one of the coldest days of the year, February 2026. Dr. Roy, think about this. I want you to give us some top 10, top 3, top 5, top 7 things that residents and fellows should be thinking about when they look for the next job. And you're fortunate that you've moved around because you've had those thoughts. So I want to anchor that. Let me tell you a quick story. Since you were name checking, I'm going to name check Dr. Greg Grilloni. He's the chair at Boston University. Wonderful, wonderful program. I did my med school and undergrad at Boston University. I was a med student or even an undergrad in the cafeteria line at University Hospital. And right behind me was a Dr. Grilloni. His name just said it on his thing, head and neck surgery, something like that. Actually paid for my lunch. Back then, lunches might have been $3. Soham, you remember that. But then he just talked to me and he said, who are you? He didn't know me from anything. I said, sir, I'm a med student. I'm doing anatomy. And that's where a love of otolaryngology began. Somebody important just taking time with you. So isn't that amazing? You're forever grateful. Go ahead. Let's get into it. But you want to make a comment on that? Then let's get into it. Go ahead.
No, I just, it's interesting when I was thinking about name checking. One of the things I hate about when I mention names is I worry about all the names I didn't mention, right? Because there have been so many people who have been involved. As they often say, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village of otolaryngologists to raise an otolaryngologist. Every resident has that village with their faculty and their co-residents.
What do you tell residents, fellows, when they come to you and say, I'm looking at my first job? Let's focus on job, not fellowships or further career. I'm looking for my first job.
So, it's a great question, Raul, and certainly for our audience, everybody's going to go through this, right? Whether you become academic faculty, whether you're looking for fellowships, whether you're looking for a job position, you are trying to figure out what's the right move for you. And one of the valuable lessons that I've learned over the years is that there is literally only one person who can define success for you, and that is you. Success for one person means something very different than it does for another. And one of the mistakes that I see people make is I see them often feeling like, well, if I don't do X, Y, or Z, I'm going to disappoint my mentors. The truth of the matter is you are the only person who will define your success. And for those of us who are in these opportune roles to be able to mentor people, our job is to empower you to that success, whatever success means to you. It is not to tell you, here's what you should do to be successful. Your job is to define success Our job is to help you get to whatever that point is. I mean, I'll give you a concrete example. I have some junior faculty members who come to me and they say, I want to be a chair one day. Okay, how can I best coach you into that? What are the skills I can teach you and the things I think you need to know to be able to apply for positions like that? I have other faculty members who say, I've got young kids at home. I want to take great care of patients. I want to go home and spend time with my kids. Okay, that's your definition of success. How can I get you there? And the same thing for the residents. You may have somebody in your ear saying you have to go do a fellowship and join academic faculty, but the truth of the matter is we need community otolaryngologists who are doing general otolaryngology to provide care to the people that we serve. And if that is your success, we have to get you there. But as a resident or a fellow, you have to define your success.
Awesome point. I actually love that. And I love what you also said. Your mentors never pass judgment. You and I didn't know it, but you chose peds otolaryngology. You might have some terrific head and neck rhinologists. Nobody passed judgment. You go into private practice. Nobody passes judgment. So really, really well said. So one thing is you said you define success for yourself. Okay. So the resident fellow saying, I want to do private practice here in Charleston, South Carolina with Gene Brown, president of the academy, they define that success. So first thing, they define their success. What else should they be thinking?
Well, I mean, certainly the first thing you have to consider are what are the things that are going to make you happy? What's going to bring you fulfillment? And that is in both the professional arena and in the personal arena. Many people, especially when they're looking at their first positions, what they're really thinking about is this where I want to be? And is this going to be the right kind of practice environment for me? And I think that you have to keep all those in mind. The other thing that I really have to counsel people, and if I could leave everybody listening to this with one singular piece of advice, your first job is not your last job necessarily. It might be, but it doesn't have to be. You and I have both held multiple roles in leadership and academia. You've had many hospital-based roles. I had a number of leadership roles in my organization. Your first position does not have to be your last position. And people have to also remember that there is no perfect job, there is no perfect life, there is no perfect place. Don't go into finding your first position saying, I've got to find the perfect job that's going to fit forever. Well, guess what? The job's going to change and you're going to change over time. What you need to find is the right position for you for right now. And then over time, as you change and the position changes and the opportunities change, you will reconsider. But don't put this pressure. I see so many trainees who put this incredible pressure on themselves saying, well, what if it turns out to not be the right fit for me? Okay, this is otolaryngology. You will have other opportunities. Don't put that pressure on yourself to say, this has to be a perfect job for the rest of eternity. That would be the one thing I would encourage people to take away from this.
Very astute, Pearl. There was a saying you and I remember from the early 2000s. I haven't heard it since, so I don't know the veracity of it. 50% of folks leave their first job in 2 years. And that was generally for surgeons. 50% of surgeons leave their first job within 2 years. But think about it. I can probably rattle off a bunch of friends that left their first job within the first 2 years. So I like what you said. So you define success for yourself. I'm taking notes here because we're going to turn this into Dr. Roy's list later. What makes you happy? And you know what? You didn't mention salary. You didn't mention practice setting. You said, yes, you consider those, but you said define what makes you happy. Okay, so I think I have success. I'm kind of thinking what makes me happy. So now do I think about partnership track? Do I think about salary? Do I think about work RVUs? Now guide me. And I'm being facetious because maybe I'm jumping the gun. So, all right. So now how do we continue the discussion for our folks that are going out there getting their first job?
You and I have been friends for so long, and you know just how much admiration and respect I have for you. I have to be careful how I phrase this. And if I say anything that's offbeat or you disagree with, I would encourage us to have a dialogue to speak up. The practice landscape is changing, as we all know. We see large groups being bought up by private equity. And private equity tends to benefit some groups very significantly and some members of some groups. But there are other people who get hurt in that process, in the acquisition process, and when a practice gets turned over to private equity. Hospital-based employment, that model is great for some people for some time, but then it's not so great for other people at different time frames. So As you evaluate all these things, I think it is very important for a couple things. One is to understand the practice model that you're coming into. I mean, speaking honestly, as an academic person employed by a medical school, I probably have it the easiest, right? When you get handed a contract, it's a page or two that basically says you agree to abide by all the university rules and stipulations. Here's your salary. Here are a few hyperlinks in case you want to review the processes and manuals, and that's it. When you get into private groups that are either privately held practices, PE held practices, hospital employment, you really do have to look at the details because all of the things you mentioned, salary, RVU, work expectations, call coverage, all of these things are unique to each of those practice environments. And you cannot gloss over it with a one size fits all approach. Now, I will tell you also that anybody who is taking on an employed model like that, well, physicians are exceptionally smart people, and people who go into otolaryngology, I think we could all agree, are probably the best of many, many things. There's a reason we draw top tier talent to this field. We could have easily applied those same abilities and skills in law school or in business school, but we didn't. This is the route we chose to go to help patients. Don't pretend for a second you are nearly as versed in these legal nuances as an attorney who specializes in physician practice and physician contracts. You are not as good as a financial person in understanding financial nuances in these things. Have faith in people who have expertise in these areas. Don't sign a contract till you've had a lawyer go over it with a fine-tooth comb, talk you through every detail because they will identify things you would not have known or wouldn't have thought to recognize. So you have to rely on the expertise of people who have devoted their lives and are probably as good at their role as you are at yours to ensure your own safety in the long run.
So really, really like that. Let me just comment on a few things. Part of my job is traveling the country, and I've been blown away by some practices. You know, you mentioned the private equity, Neil Hofstein's Parallel ENT, Jonathan Cooper, Richard Rivero, leaders of Elevate, unbelievable. Net promoter score of 90. You walk in there, it's gorgeous. There's full price transparency. Seeing academic centers such as yours. But what you're saying is you see one practice, you see one practice. I'm on team otolaryngology. I want every otolaryngologist to win. You then, I think what you're getting at is the third point here is contracting and seeking out expertise. So I think that's where you're going a little bit. So let me ask the question. I'm a trainee. I'm coming out. I can't afford a lawyer for $1,500, $2,000, $3,000. But I think what you're saying is you can't afford not to. So you do give that advice. You say engage an expert. Is that right?
Literally word for word, what I would say is if a trainee, and they have said to me, I'm not sure I can afford a lawyer, I will tell them this is an investment in your future. For those of you who paid tuition for medical school, that was a big investment in your future. This is a potentially, usually a pretty small investment, but could save you immense amounts of grief. And again, the landscape is changing. You know, as we know, elections have consequences. One of the things that's changed is restrictive covenants and their enforceability. Traditionally, when you signed a restrictive covenant, you pretty much guaranteed that you couldn't leave that practice and practice within a certain radius. Now, restrictive covenants are kind of going by the wayside. Even if they're written in, they may not be enforceable. Lots of these things are constantly changing. And as surgeons, we are so invested in surgical care, in patient care, that we don't have the time to keep up with the nuances of an ever-changing landscape in the non-clinical care aspect of healthcare delivery. So we have to rely on people who have that expertise, who understand legislative advances, who understand financial management, who understand legal contracting and things of that nature. Don't hesitate to have a team of people working for you because, again, they're small investments that have very big payoffs in the future.
I really like that. I had a 51-mile non-compete, 51-mile, right? So, and I've seen some non-competes 2.55 miles. Some of them are just bizarro. You know, they'll block you out at certain areas. It's almost like gerrymandering. So I think that's a great point, Dr. Roy. So you define success for yourself. You are the only one that knows what makes you happy. So find that practice setting. And then retain experts. Let's just call that experts, right? Get an expert team. So we talked about a contract. Who else should be on your expert team? You want to have a lawyer helping you. You don't want to put them on retainer or pay them that much, but we need a lawyer. Dr. Roy, what else? Who else do you consider?
So a couple things. So first of all, the lawyers who do this sort of physician contracting typically don't expect a big retainer. You're typically just paying a flat fee for their review and commentary or an hourly fee, but it's not a ton of work for them. They do this all the time. Same concept as well, I have a guy who I've grown real close to. He's the handyman at my house. And he does a few minor things around the house. And he makes it look so easy. I'm like, I should probably learn to do that. And he sat down with me. His name's Mark. He's a wonderful guy. He's a Russian guy. And he sat down with me and he said, you have devoted your entire life to helping children and to curing them and fixing them when you can. He's like, why would you want to devote all this energy to learn how to fix this minor thing? I already know how to do that. I can do it 3 times as fast and save you the grief for very little money. And he's absolutely right. And I think that is a very applicable metaphor. Don't try to turn yourself into an expert in these issues. Yes, you want to be financially versed. You want to understand the contracting nuances, but don't feel that you have to develop that expertise. You need the expertise of somebody who already knows how to do it, can probably do it faster than you and do it better than you. As far as the specifics around the team goes, that really depends on your circumstances. Now, my life was so simple, Raul, and I don't recall if you were married by the time you finished training. But when I finished training, I had no partner, no spouse, no child. I didn't have a dog. I had me, and I had a zero balance with the world. And I remember at my graduation turning to one of my friends and saying, if ever I'm going to get hit by a bus, today is the day to do it, because I had no debt and I had no assets. I'm even. I'm square with the world. I was 31 years old. We're square. Now, I have multiple attorneys that I reach out to on occasion, one of whom handles, employment stuff, one of whom handles, stuff related to my trust and estate. I have a financial advisor. I've got an accountant. I have a team of people who have expertise that work together to help it. Now, again, I'm not some big shot billionaire who has to pay all these people tons of money. Not at all. My accountant I engage with roughly once a year, starting in February through the end of March when he does my taxes. My financial advisor I talk to once a month just to catch up. Then once every 6 months, we do a quick financial review. You're not paying these people a fortune to do this. You're just kind of keeping those relationships open to be able to help you understand as you move forward, because your circumstances change. For many of our trainees, they may come out of training with children or a family. Some of our trainees, when they go out into practice, will have families or partners or things like that. So your needs will change over time, and your kind of team of advisors will change during that time as well. Sort of miss sometimes the days where it was just me and a zero balance with the world. But, your circumstances change and you adapt to change with those circumstances.
Yeah, very, very well said. And you and I have trainees and fellows coming out with three, four, five, $600,000 of debt because compounding, as Einstein said, is one of the most powerful equations. But compounding the other way, loan and debt compounding, can crush you. What advice do you give to those folks saying, you know what, I'm drowning. I've got a family. I have dependents. I take care of elder care. And now I've got 500,000, which is not a crazy number, Dr. Roy. We see that with our trainee.
No, I think the average debt now is like something like 400,000, right? Coming out as one of my former residents who's now in practice in the Baltimore area in Maryland. I remember him telling me, he and his wife were carrying around an entire mortgage up in their heads because of the amount of student debt. So, to answer your question, what do we tell them? Well, the first thing is don't panic, okay? I know we talk a lot about reimbursements and about incomes, but the truth of the matter is we are still very much in the upper middle class bracket of income for otolaryngologists. And some otolaryngologists are in the very highest brackets, but at least most of us are going to be in the upper middle class brackets. The important thing is to understand the math around this. Now, I give a course on financial literacy that I like to talk my residents through on some basics. What's a 401k? What's a 401a? What's a 403b? What is a 457 if you have the opportunity? What are rules around Roth IRAs? What's the cream and the coffee rule? Things like this, some basic understanding things so that you understand it. Compounding, as you mentioned, the eighth wonder of the world. It's very important to recognize that if you pay yourself first, that compounding will often exceed any negative compounding of debt interest. So there's good debt and bad debt, right? And I don't know how much you want to get into the specifics. I'm not a financial advisor. I would be a fiduciary in the sense that I want other people to do well. But I'm not a financial advisor. But these concepts of low interest debt is actually in your favor. If you have a low mortgage rate, that's good debt. Credit card debt tends to be very high. That is bad debt. Student loan debt tends to be very good because it's an investment in your future, but it's also very low interest. So if you're paying 2% on your student loans or 2.5% on your student loans, but a market return is giving you 13%, or like some accounts did last year, 18%, you are far better off paying yourself first. And that's certainly a good piece of advice. Pay yourself first before you start paying off anything else, unless it's bad debt. So again, I don't know how much of the specifics you want to get into because I'm not a financial advisor, but you should have a financial advisor who explains these things to you at a level that you're comfortable with. Some people have very strong financial literacy, others don't. I was clueless. I mean, I grew up in poverty. My father passed away when I was 2. He had no life insurance. My mom was a widow who raised 2 kids in a foreign country. I grew up in absolute poverty, and this is all stuff I learned along the way through listening, reading, and speaking to people. And so any of our trainees who's out there who's like, look, I got a family, I'm struggling, I don't understand anything about money, don't worry. Whole group of people out there who can help you. We can point you to resources to help you understand those things too.
I love that. Let's end up with maybe a final pearl if you have one. So let me try to summarize because it's important for our future partners and colleagues. So you define success for yourself. You know what makes you happy. Surround yourself with a team of experts from attorneys, finance. There are people out here who commit their life to that. Make sure they do that. What is a final piece or pearl that you give to your trainees or those seeking advice for that first job?
So it's interesting the way you phrase the question. So when it comes to the first job, what I would always remind trainees is bet on yourself. Okay. One of the great subtleties in otolaryngology, there are 109 training programs, or I forget, with the addition of DO programs, it's probably a few more, 120 something. But roughly 100 plus residency training programs in otolaryngology. There is not a bad one among them. And I tell my students this all the time. There is no bad training program. Wherever you match, you are going to be exceptionally well trained.
I agree. Yeah.
We don't have a weak link in that entire ACGME list of otolaryngology programs.
Okay.
So exhale, believe in yourself, bet on your own skills. Do that when you're looking for a job. Believe in yourself. And if you do that, it will pay off. The non-job related advice I give to people who are going out is that in the long run, you will not be remembered for the surgeries you did. I hate to say it, but yes, a few individual patients will remember you. But that's not where your legacy will lie. Your legacy will lie in the people you engaged with every day. And that's family members, that's staff members, that is your family, your partners, your family, your children, whatever. The way that you will be remembered in the long run is the legacy that you left with all of those folks. And certainly as I've gotten older, and I don't know if you've hit your midlife crisis yet, but I just kind of keep wondering when my clock is going to expire. I hope that people will come to my funeral and say, he invested in me, he believed in me, and he helped me believe in myself. That to me will be the best legacy I can leave.
I appreciate that. I'm going to summarize, then I'm going to ask you for a couple of mistakes, maybe that you've made, to be introspective, because people only see your success. And we'll keep them job related. Just or you've seen your peers make. You don't have to be that introspective, but some powerful mistakes. So just to summarize this list, what do you all need to think about as you get out there? You define your success. You know what makes you happy. Surround yourself with experts. Bet on yourself. And remember that it's not the surgeries that define you, it's the relationships. And it reminds me of Dr. Netterville's Conley lecture at the opening ceremony, which I'm sure you saw, right? Unbelievable. Yeah, you go back and watch that, folks. I have that on my phone. I listen to it every 3 to 4, 5, 6 months. You think about those patients. It's a great story. Yeah, it was great. One or two mistakes. Obviously, you probably learned. That's why you came up with this list of 5. You've learned from your mistakes, but somewhere you're like, oh man, I wish I had that again.
Yeah, great question, man. And like I said, I'm writing a book called Mistakes I've Made, and I feel like I just keep adding more chapters.
Mhm.
First thing is the world is not a blank canvas. Okay? Biggest mistake I think I've made in my career was walking into a situation where I just felt like, oh, this was a blank canvas onto which I could paint my masterpiece. No, that was foolish. What you need to do is when you walk into a new situation is listen more than you speak. Learn the players, learn the relationships, learn the structure, learn the culture, study all those things before you start trying to implement or effect change. If you just walk in guns blazing and say, I'm going to make this place what I think it should be, you're going to end up hurting yourself in the long run. And that was a big mistake I made along the way. I should have understood and listened more. Certainly, for those of you who are entertaining new roles or entertaining new positions, lots of great material to read before you go out there. Easy. I love reading business books. That's kind of my thing. I got my master's in management, and because I really love that sort of thing about organizational culture, read a book called The First 90 Days. It's very, very helpful in understanding what to do and, more importantly, what not to do in your first 3 months, because I made the mistake of walking in thinking I could just make things the way I wanted to. This was going to be my Mona Lisa. No, that was foolish on my behalf. So, listen more, speak less, understand more before you attempt to make changes, before you attempt to make your mark on an organization. That was, I think, the biggest ones that I've made.
I love that. I love that. I'll make a comment and then I'll give you the last word, and then we'll wrap it up. Do you have your trainees or fellows or those entering practices, do you suggest they read The First 90 Days? I love that book. Every time I take a new role, actually a new role, I read it. Not a new job, even a new role. Do you pass that on to physicians as well, or do you keep that on those that have an affinity towards business?
Well, I think it's useful advice no matter what. If you're entering a group of 4 physicians in a private practice that's privately owned, reading that book will help you understand how to integrate into that new practice as the junior recruit, as the junior physician, how to integrate into that practice, how to integrate with the staff and with your new hospitals, wherever you'll be working. I think that that particular book holds quite a bit of value for anybody entering a new position, anywhere, in any circumstance. Just some generalized life advice. I think I have a copy in my bookshelf over here. So I find.
Could you give us the author of that? And maybe you could find it. Do you see the author? Let's do this on Amazon real quick, because let's both try to make sure, because there's a bunch of First 90 Days.
Michael Watkins is the author. And now let me see. Do you want, I can put the link. I don't know.
Yes, that's it. Nope, that's it. That's the one I used. The First 90 Days, Michael D. Watkins. Yeah, that's the one I used. Perfect. Thank you. Dr. Roy, any final comments or remarks? Let's keep it focused to job search, job seeking. I know you have tons of comments, but what would you end the podcast with? We'll give you the final word, and thank you very much for joining us. And you're going to come back again. I know it for sure.
Oh, I appreciate that very much. Well, obviously, I'd wrap up by saying thank you for having me. I'm humbled and flattered, and I'm like, what am I doing here, man? I'm a nobody. I'm just so honored to be here and flattered that people would ask for me. You know what? When you're looking for a new job or when you're looking for your first position, don't go at it alone, okay? Enlist the help of everyone you can get. That starts with your core, and that means your family, your friends, whatever your nucleus is. Make sure that they are engaged every step of the way, and then ask for advice. Ask advice from your trusted friends, your trusted colleagues, your trusted mentors, your chairs, your program directors, your people who have been there before. Get the advice. The more people you talk to, yes, some of that advice will be conflicting, but the better off you're going to have a sense that, okay, I'm doing things the right way here. So really just ask questions. What should I be thinking about? What am I missing? What do you think about this? What are the pitfalls I should look out for? The more people you ask, the better suited you're going to be, I believe.
Wonderful. Dr. Roy, thank you so much. Children's Colorado, it's been our honor. Thank you very much.
It's really been my honor, Darsha. Thank you so much.
We hope today's episode sparked some fresh ideas. If it resonated with you, please subscribe and share it with friends. Have thoughts or suggestions? Use the feedback form in the show notes. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to follow us on social media for highlights, behind-the-scenes content, and updates. Thanks for listening. See you next time.